It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I guess it's story time. Who was that? Mr. Codger's Neighborhood or something like that? Fireside Chat number 4. The 1947 Indian Chief story, plus one shout out. Let's get cracking. Good moto morning. Welcome, beautiful people, to Kraken's Garage. I'm your host, Eric, and on Kraken's Garage, we discuss all good things on 2 and 3 wheels. We're going to accomplish 3 things today on today's video. We're going to give away these MotoRadds chins mounts of that video I dropped yesterday, and we'll pick a winner at the end of this video. If you want to skip the story, I'll have place markers down below so you can skip right to the end and find out who won. Hopefully you'll stick around because we have a banger of a story for you about Pop's 1947 Indian Chief. Then at the very end of this video, we're going to do our shout out to all my end watchers. I hope you stick around for that as we try to very quietly build the moto community one video at a time. Let's get to it. First and foremost, my PurpleOnThree shirt that Jody gave me at VAM. Thank you very much. I will proudly sport it on several of my videos as we move forward with this debacle of a channel. So thank you very much, Jody. Let's get to the story. Once upon a time, Pop owned 2 Indian motorcycles. One was a 1946 Indian Chief and one was a 1947 Indian Chief. One was a solo bike, and that would be the 1947. I will show you better pictures of that one in just a moment. And the other was a 1946 Indian Chief that had an OEM sidecar in it with a functional reverse that Pop and I found down in Mexico. So that's a wonderful story behind that one for another day. Pop and Ann had a huge teddy bear the size of a human being, which rode around in the sidecar when Ann wasn't in it. And the bear wore a pair of large goggles and a red bandana around its neck. Pop also wore goggles and his pudding bowl helmet. They were an arresting sight when they passed, and cars were known to run off the road with the driver craning his neck to look backwards. The solo Indian wasn't so flashy. Pop rode it wearing the same pudding bowl helmet and goggles and a brown leather aviator's jacket, a vintage of World War II with brown gloves and an old pair of tan pull-on boots. One day he got a phone call from the editor of a magazine dedicated to antique motorcycles. They had heard that he was riding around Southern California on an old Indian and were interested in photographing him and the bike for the cover of their magazine. The key word here was riding. Most owners of antique bikes never ride them. They take them to shows on trailers with canvas covers to protect the precious paint and never even put fuel in their tanks. Pop was a rarity in the sense that he was buzzing around town on his and having fun with it. He always felt, what's the point in owning a motorcycle if you can't ride it? I have to agree with him on that. He told them he was interested in their proposition, and a date and time was set to meet in Lake Elsinore, California. More on that later, why they chose Lake Elsinore. So my parents met at the diner and conferred over coffee. They had the impression that they wanted to pose the bike somewhere, either with or without Pop in the saddle. But no, they wanted an action photo with Pop riding the bike across a suitable field with no billboards or telephone poles in sight to spoil the scenery. And got in their car and they drove all over the surrounding area, Pop putting along behind us. The photographer planned to sit in the trunk of the car with the lid open and shoot pictures on his Speed Graphics camera while Pop tore along in a cloud of dust. The photographer was very choosy about where he wanted this action to take place, and there were a lot of stops and conferences. Pop must have kick-started that bike 30 times this day, and I did wonder if his leg was going to last. They didn't seem to realize that he didn't just turn the key and start the bike each time they stopped and conferred. Finally, the photographer found the spot of his dreams, a field of golden grain of some kind and a rutted, overgrown farm road meandering through it. They took off, Ann in the passenger seat with the driver, the photographer in the trunk, and Pop was appointed distance behind the car. Almost immediately, the photographer shouted, "Stop!" I ran around the back to see what he wanted, and he said the trunk was like bouncing up and down and hitting him on the head every time it came down. Could I please climb in the trunk with him and hold the lid up? So Ann said, sure. And she did that. When we had finally intertwined our arms and legs so that he could hold up the big camera and I could hold the big trunk lid, we started off again. We tried different speeds and Pop moved around on the seat from a relaxed slump to a forward lean over the handlebars as if bracing for an impending crash. Pop had offered them two types of head covering. One was a brown leather cap with a strap under the chin that closed with a snap. I really thought it was more World War I than World War II, and probably worn by pilots in open cockpits. The other was a pudding bowl, which they opted for. We have a snapshot in the family album of Pop at age 16 standing on the shoulders of two Indian riders, and he was wearing a cap just like that, except his was a canvas instead of leather. That would have been around 1946. When the photographer had about 50 shots under his belt, he crawled out of the trunk. Ann's arms were about done in from holding up the damn trunk lid. They all shook hands and they said they didn't know what month the chosen photo would be on the cover, but they would send us copies. About 3 months later, we received a package of 6 copies of Antique Motorcycling magazine and all 49 negatives of the rejects. It was a great cover photo and worth all the trouble, and no, they didn't offer to pay them for their trouble. And here's a cover of the magazine. And I'll throw some pictures up here of the article, just some highlights of the article. If anybody has any interest in this particular article, I will scan the article and email it to you. If you're interested in reading that article, it's a very interesting story. Just email me at krakensgarage@gmail.com and I will email you a copy of this story to read. Now, when I brought up Lake Elsinore, California, and why they decided to do the photo op there was because the builder of both of Pop's bike, his name was Jake Junker, and this man lived, eat, and breathed Indian motorcycles to the point where back in the 70s, he took his life savings of $5,500, made many truck trips all across the United States to buy out the remaining parts of old defunct Indian dealerships that went out of business. And he started building bikes from these parts from the ground up. So actually when Dad bought that bike, believe it or not, it had 0 miles on it. It was all from parts that were laying around back in the 70s. Without a doubt, those two Indian bikes were Pop's pride and joy. He loved them until he took his last breath. I got to ride both of them quite a bit, in particular this one, and that's the last Indian I ever rode. And what a joy and honor it was to get to ride a piece of history like that. So I hope you enjoyed today's story. Let's get to the giveaway. Here is the list. We have 15 people competing for the free helmet. I will post a copy of this up here on the screen so you can see what number you are. I issued everybody a numeric number. Now, let me pull up my app, my random number generator. We have a maximum of 15 people. And you will see before I do, you can see we have 15 people and we're going to choose one winner. Good luck, everybody. And the winner is number 3, My ADV 360. You are the proud owner of the 2 chin mounts. Please email me at krakensgarage@gmail.com. Or if you're on Instagram, just find me on Instagram and send me a direct message and let me know your address and I'll get this in the mail to you wherever you are in the world. So thanks for playing along, everybody. And a big hearty shout out to MotoRadds for supplying the free goodies that I did a review on to give away to one of my viewers. Thank you. And you know what time it is to all my ad watchers. This week's shout out goes to Bob Nelson. Bob has 312 subs. He has 142 videos out. He recently sold his Street Glide Standard that he dubbed Black Betty, and he is just recently picked up the ultimate primo sport touring bike, in my opinion, the Honda ST1300. I had the honor and privilege of meeting this man at VAM 22. And I'm sorry I didn't get a picture of him. I'm just not that guy that runs around with a camera when I meet somebody, stuffing it in people's faces. But I regretted afterwards that I don't have any pictures of him. But Bob is just a stand-up guy. He has a real laid-back channel where he just shares his meanderings as he's riding down the road. It's like listening to your uncle or your grandfather talking to you while you're having a cup of coffee by the fireplace or while you're fishing or something. Just a very enjoyable channel to watch. So I hope you go check out Bob, and Bob, keep up the great work. If you decide you would like and subscribe to his channel, please let him know that Kraken sent you. And there's my ghost dog, Daisy May. She's here to remind me that it's time to wrap up this video. If you would like to become a Patreon, the link is listed right down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. And if you want to see more in the future, hit that subscribe button right down there in the corner. And remember, folks, go riding because it's good for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.